Hi, can't hear you. No sound.
Uh, yeah, sorry, I didn't bring myself into the spotlight. Okay, but
Oh,
now it should be.
okay, what was happening there? Because we were all on, but it was saying waiting for present or something.
Yeah, so I control the call. I bring in the audience, I bring in the speaker, and so on, so that we don't have disruption. So if anybody's
Okay,
mics are on, and then if somebody's talking in the background, I can remove them from it. So Zantel's also on at the moment. So right now it's just the three of us, and then
okay.
so
Why
that we
can't
know
I see?
everything's working.
Why can't
I
I
did.
see?
I just brought Zantel on now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Zantel, you're on mute. You need to
Sorry, I
unmute.
was on mute. How are you?
Hi, Zantel.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Thank you. I love your scarf. I'm a scarf
I think
person. I love
I'm a Scott person. Yeah, we both are. Just a question quickly. There's a little red dot in the top right hand corner. Is that because it's being recorded?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So when I'm sharing this, I'll obviously edit the video and remove this portion of it and so on,
Right.
so that yeah. So now it's just obviously for us to test, and we know that everything is running perfectly. So even when you join on your iPad will just be a viewer, so they won't
I'm
be
not
able
going
to
to.
view.
Okay, I was thinking I'm a bit too scared to. I
You
think we agreed
you
that I
can,
won't.
because remember
Yeah, but I remember I need it for the chat, and remember the iPad wouldn't show the chat, so it's a bit
it should
pointless.
show that. Oh yeah, it won't. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But it'll show you the audience though, or it'll show you what everybody else is viewing.
Yeah, maybe that's okay. Then I can just be sure of it.
Yeah,
And do that.
the mic will be turned off because remember I can control your mic and everything. So if I'm not going to bring your iPad into the spotlight, I will just bring you into the spotlight and not the iPad, so that you just have your iPad volume must just be turned down.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Let's just see if this is going to work. I'm not sure why my background is so dark. Sure. Does it look okay? Is it
No,
manageable?
you look 100%.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so we
Good.
got people joining the call at the moment, so I think that the test is fine. So now if you on it on your iPad, if you turn the
Hold
volume,
on.
yeah.
Can I just check the? I just want to check
Hi,
the.
everyone. We're just doing final technical tests, so just bear with us, please.
Can I just check the screen? Um, okay. For some reason, it's not showing my screen on my iPad. Are you seeing my
You
screen?
haven't shared it yet. You removed it away, so I can't I can't see your screen now.
Okay. Well, I left it there, so let me try again. Just call me if my screen goes up for whatever reason. But and
That's perfect.
can you hear the feedback from my iPad?
No.
No,
No.
nothing. No.
Okay. I'm just testing this. You see what happens. I'll just have to go in and out like that. But
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah. So I'll manage most of the chats as well. So between myself and Zantel, we'll manage the chat. We'll manage all the users as well. So if people want to interact with you, by all means, they can put up their hand as if they're in a conference venue, and then I can bring them onto the call as well.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
And you're going to introduce me, Ronaldo?
Zantel will introduce you.
Then tell will
Yes.
introduce me. Okay. Thanks, both of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, cool. See you at 9.
See you at 9.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're just going to give it a few more minutes so that everybody else can join in, and then we can start. I'm just going to start creating an audience in the meantime, and so that we have a lot of nice people to look at. So I take Cape Town, if you could please turn your camera on as well, that would be great. And I'm going to add more people to the audience. Oh, look at you guys. You look so nice. Gareth, pull your stomach in or point the camera upwards. Okay, I'm going to add in more people. Hi, Zan.
Hi, Cape Town.
Got Central on the call as well. And there's a few more people that are joining. At the moment, we've got 38 participants, and we know we've got way more people at iTech than 38. Hi, Gav.
Morning,
Hello,
Gavin.
John. Hello.
Hi. Okay. We're just going to give it a few more minutes for everybody to join in, and then we're going to begin. Okay. So for those of you that have joined the call on the spotlight, I'm just going to make sure that your mics are turned off. But if you do need to ask a question, you can put your mic back on. The session is going to be very interactive, and we encourage the communication between the people in the spotlight as well as anybody viewing it.
Morning, Jessica.
Sorry, Jessica, I put you on mute and then your turn to speak.
No problem. Hi, everyone.
Okay. I'm just going to give it 2 more minutes because we see that some people still getting on at the moment. And then I will begin. If you feel like you want to be in the spotlight, then you can raise your hand to me and I'll bring you into the spotlight. I won't judge if you're funny looking. Okay, I think we can begin. So we're getting a lot more people joining the stream instead of being participants, which is still great. And I'm going to continue. So hi, everybody. My name is Ronaldo, for those that don't know me. And firstly, thank you for joining this call. We really appreciate it. And we know this takes a lot of your time away from your work. So some of you might be wondering why you're on this call. And if you looked at the title of this call, it said rewiring your brain. So firstly, disclaimer, iTech leaders and iTech Exco are not brain surgeons, so we won't be rewiring your brain in that way. But I would like to ask you to take a minute to grab a pen and a notebook, okay? Because the session today is going to be very interactive and very informative. So I know you're asking why you're on this call and why is it important that you stay onto this. Zantal, can you please enlighten us on that?
Yes, absolutely. So for the past month or two, we were speaking and asking each other, who are we going to get to really just motivate the staff and just like rewire our brains to think more positively. It's difficult. Lockdown, COVID, working from home. I mean, it's difficult. So, and Gavin actually came across this Dr. Colleen Lightbody, known as the brain guru. I mean, what else do you need? Just hearing that. So she's the founder and managing director of BrainWise, Mastery Through Neuroscience. That just blew me away. When I looked at her profile, I thought, wow, this is one amazing lady. I mean, just her qualification. She's got a PhD in philosophy. She's got a master's degree in leadership. She's got a postgraduate diploma in neuroleadership. She's got a BA honors degree in psychology, and she's a professional certified coach. Now, if that all doesn't keep her busy, just to make sure she's not bored, she's an avid cyclist. She's done a lot of events. She runs marathons. She even completed 3 full Ironman challenges. She's climbed the Kilimanjaro and the Everest Base Camp. I mean, her own 2 children calls her Lioness Mom. So I really think that we got someone to really speak to you guys. We did send you a document so that if you were able to print it, it would be great. Make notes on it. Focus on this session, and whatever guides and tools and guidance she gives you, go and implement it. I think that's the most important part of a keynote speaker, international keynote speaker, to whatever she gives you, what resonates with you, take it home and implement it in your personal and work life. So everyone, enjoy the session. I'm super excited. Enjoy the session and enjoy Friday. Welcome.
Before I bring Colleen on, I just had to tell you that after you said that about the profile, I feel stupid. It's like after everything that Colleen has accomplished, I feel really stupid. Now I feel the way I look. So I'm going to bring on Colleen. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, Ronaldo. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So make no mistake, Ronaldo, I'm not that bright myself. In fact, I'd actually failed grade 11 quite profoundly well and dropped out of university 3 or 4 times at various times. But I'll perhaps tell you my story at the end, because I feel kind of as awed by what Zantel said as every single time I hear it. So thank you, everyone. It's a great privilege to be here today to talk to you about your brain, and most importantly, to teach you a technique to develop a well-trained mind, a technique that I think is particularly important at the current times. And for some bizarre reason, we're never taught this. We're never taught about how to use our brain better, how to be in control of our mind, how to be in control of our thinking, and therefore create optimal performance. So this is not just a thought about mind control, hypnotic techniques, etc. But it's about how do we use our mind to create our ultimate goals, optimal performance, enhanced relationships, and very importantly, a sense of well-being. Because that's what I think a lot of people are really struggling with at the moment, is not feeling that all is right in the world inside themselves, because we certainly know that all is not right in the world. So I'm just going to share my PowerPoint, and Ronaldo, just support me if you're not seeing anything or if it's not coming across clearly. What I want to say to you is I would love to make this interactive, and I'm having a little difficulty accessing the chat as I present my PowerPoint, but Ronaldo will bring anything in the chat to my attention. So at any stage, if you have got any questions, please ask them of me as we go along. I'm a much better presenter when I'm engaging with people than when I'm just talking at a screen. And also, I'm going to be staying on afterwards. I said to Zantal, I'll stay on for about 30 minutes if necessary afterwards for anyone who's got any specific questions, because I'm basically giving you in an hour what I'd love to have 3 weeks to teach you. So to just start with, I'd like to share with you what I'm going to be talking about. So it is about mindfulness. It's a subject that some of you want to run for the hills right away to go, oh, not this weird, crazy stuff that we're going to now have to light incense, burn candles, and start chanting. So I assure you we're not going to be doing that today. I'm going to be talking about mindfulness from a scientific perspective. We're going to talk about what it is, why we need to pay attention to the subject called mindfulness. I will give you a taste of the neuroscience behind the construct and the art of mindfulness. And then finally, I'll give you some techniques about how can you implement it in your daily lives. And remember that this is not just about you as a human being at work, but this is about you as a human being in all the aspects of your world. So whether this is you in your relationships with your families, parenting your children, whether you're learning and studying, and being the best version of yourself in your organization. So I'm going to teach you an art about how do the top performers in the world actually train their minds and train their crafts. So to start with, what is mindfulness? So mindfulness is, the definition would be the awareness of the present moment without judgment or interpretation. And you'll start to understand that as I talk a little bit. Understanding that it is based in ancient spiritual traditions. However, it is not a religious practice. And what I've done and what I'm doing in this talk today is I'm bringing together these ancient spiritual traditions of mental practice with Western ideas of performance and outcome and well-being. So it's an integration of Eastern and Western perspectives. Ensure that please don't worry, because it's not, like I said, about chanting, but it's about really, really understanding how your mind works and how you can use it to the best effect. Again, I think it's bizarre that we do not teach this to children at school. This should be part of the absolutely essential part of the curriculum. So really what I'm saying to you, when I'm saying be mindful, I'm saying make sure that your mind is where your feet are, because most of us are wandering around the world completely mindlessly, not even aware that we're not aware. So I'm basically talking about mindfulness as opposed to mindlessness, which is unconsciousness, essentially. And why is it important that we learn about this? I mean, obviously, the situation that we're currently in is demanding extreme management of our emotional states. We are going through COVID times, and I don't care what anybody says. I don't look at it as though this is now for the transformation of the planet, or let's get all joyful because the dolphins are now floating up the Venice canals. Okay, I think it is a tough time. People are suffering, people are losing family, people are getting ill, people are losing their livelihoods. We are stressed, we are anxious. It is a tough time that the world is going through. And never, in my opinion, has there been a more important time to be able to become conscious, to be present within our lives, instead of caught in a narrative about what is going on around us. It's also about managing what is going on around us, not ignoring the fact that it exists. In the world today, over 300 million people are diagnosed with suffering from depression. Well over 300 million people are diagnosed with suffering from anxiety. Suicide ideation is exponentially growing. Alcohol, drug use, mental disorders are at probably their peak that they ever have been. So we're going through tough situations, and yet you're still having to navigate your business world. You're still having to navigate your personal life. So how do people do that? Okay, and do that well? And this is the technique that we're going to give you to be able to do that. Just remember, although this feels like a bit of a, weird kind of esoteric concept, some of the top performers in the world are practicing mindfulness. Novak Djokovic is a great fan of mindfulness. Bill Ford, who runs the Ford company, practices mindfulness, and it's part of his company's philosophy. It's part of his company's the actions that they take are embedded in mindfulness principles. Jeff Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn, practices mindfulness, has embedded it into his organization. Steve Jobs. And then apart from Oprah, Michael Jordan, I can mention many others, but apart from that, your enlightened spiritual leaders, monks, enlightened Buddhists, etc., are all practicing mindfulness. So I'm going to explain more to you about what this awareness of the present moment without judgment really means. Before I do that, though, I want to talk to you a little bit about I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what is going on in your brain when we practice mindfulness. So I'm just going to check in quickly. Ronaldo, no, nothing in the chat. Are we still okay? Is everybody following so far?
Yeah, nothing in the chat yet, and I think it will start to get more interactive now.
Okay, well, yeah, people love the brain stuff, so this is where most people are pretty engaged. So I did give you this picture because it's useful to sometimes have a visual, and I'll tell you why in terms of your brain, in order to understand and be able to see the process that we're talking about. So essentially, you have got this brain in your skull. If you hold up your hands, if everybody holds up their hands, wait, I need to see the pictures of while you do this. I'm not looking at my PowerPoint. If you hold up your hands and put your hands together like this, okay, this is approximately the size of your brain in your skull. Okay, I'm looking there at Cape Town, seeing it. Now you can see, if you look at all the groups, this is where most of the men are now comparing brain sizes. Okay, so the good news is for men is that men's brains are bigger than women's brains, and men also do have more brain cells than women do. However, ladies, there is a however, and I'll tell you about that in a little while. Okay, so, but people are pretty surprised that this is the size of your brain, because we think that this is our brain, but this is your skull, and your skull is there to protect your brain because your brain is remarkably soft. It is so soft if I had a brain that I'd just taken out of a cadaver and I had it in my hands. I know that's creepy, but that is one of my bucket list things that I'd like to have. If I had a brain in my hands and I put the brain onto the desk in front of me, that brain is immediately going to misshapen. That is how soft a brain actually is. Now, creepy as this may be, it's actually really good news, because it talks to probably the essential aspect of the talk I'm doing today, which is a concept called neuroplasticity. I'm sure most of you have heard of it. And neuroplasticity says that the brain is capable of change right throughout your lifetime. So the good news is that you are not stuck in this personality, the IQ. There you go, Ronaldo. I've seen Ronaldo, people profoundly change their IQ by 10 to 20 points over a matter of weeks. I've seen people take up musical instruments in their 50s and literally change their temperament in their 60s and 70s, okay? There's some ways and means in which to do that, but the good news is that you've got the capacity to do it. So however you're feeling right now, you might feel stuck in who you are, what you're experiencing. I can't help these thoughts that I'm having. I can't help feeling depressed. The good news is that you do have the capacity to change. And just understanding that sometimes can actually be transformational in itself. Okay, so let me go back to so I've said to you, you've got two sides to your brain. Structurally, they're almost identical. So if you have a look at my picture here, which I did give you on the document, is that we've got one half of the brain here. Now, the first part we're going to talk about is this part that's right here behind your forehead. If you put your hand up to your forehead, this is called the prefrontal cortex. Okay, I'm sure you've heard of it, PFC. Now, the most important thing to know about the prefrontal cortex is this is the thinking, rational, reasoning, conscious part of your brain, and only human beings have a prefrontal cortex. No other creature has one. Okay, so really important part of our brain. You've probably heard of people getting brain injuries in their frontal cortex where it changes their personalities. They lack impulse control. They lack judgment, decision-making, reasoning. So clearly, this is why you've got to wear a helmet if you're a cyclist or on a motorbike. Clearly, it's really, really important to protect our prefrontal cortex. And definitely what we want in your organization is we want people to bring their prefrontal cortex to work. But I'll show you how easily we can sabotage it. We then have the visual cortex at the back of our brain here. So this is actually where you see right at the back. You don't see with your eyes. Your eyes are merely a mechanism to take a message into your brain and to the visual cortex, which is at the back of the brain. Why it's important is the reason that I gave you the pictures before here, and I said I suggest that you take notes. Ronaldo asked you to take your notebook out, is because when something is visual, when something is seen, the brain conceptualizes it so much better. Okay, so we need to make sure that we are able to, when we talk to people, we're able to use stories, we're able to use visuals, we're able to use images. Just talking doesn't access the brain in the best way possible. And the reason for that, by the way, is this visual cortex actually takes up a massive amount of real estate in your brain. If I ask you to think about anything, if I said to you, think about, I don't know, think about an orange, immediately you're going to picture an orange. Okay, we'll talk a bit about this with mindfulness. We've got the sensory motor cortex here at the top of the brain, and then we've got the auditory cortex on the outside. So the parts of the brain that I've spoken about now are the outermost covering of the brain. All those curves and those little, they call them sulci and gyra that we see on the outermost surface of the brain is actually only a very thin outer covering. Then what we have in the middle of the brain is our limbic system. This is also known as the instinctive brain, the reactive brain, the survival brain. Some of you might have heard the term reptile brain. It's a little bit dated, but basically what it's referring to is our survival, instinctive, reactive, the part of the brain that keeps us alive. Okay, now I know it looks as though that outermost part takes up most space and this limbic system is only in the middle. But in actual fact, what you have to understand is that the outermost part, the outermost covering is only about the thickness of the rind of a grapefruit. And this limbic system actually, first of all, it's far more ancient. And secondly, it's far more dense. And thirdly, it's far more easy to trigger. And it takes up a whole lot more real estate. So it is incredibly easy to overwhelm our prefrontal cortex, our rational brain, with our survival, instinctive, emotional, reactive brain. And that is exactly what is going on right now. We are basically facing this threat in our world, which is COVID-19. Think about COVID-19 not as some kind of out there disease or pandemic that we're experiencing, but think about COVID-19 as actually our brain is experiencing COVID-19 as a threat to our lives on a constant basis. It is like we're wandering around the savannah and there is this saber-toothed tiger that we are constantly having to defend ourselves against. Now, remember, our brains were designed to protect ourselves against one saber-toothed tiger a year. Now what we're doing is we're facing this saber-toothed tiger day in, day out. That's all we're experiencing is this constant, permanent threat. Sometimes it's more in our presence. Sometimes it's more dramatic, but it's almost constantly there. And so what is happening is this limbic system, this instinctive brain, is overwhelming our thinking, rational, reasoning brain. Two other important parts I just want to mention quickly. One is called the amygdala. I'm sure most of you have heard of something called the amygdala hijack. The amygdala is that part of the brain. And now, if you see where it's positioned here, it's right between the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex goes right under your eyes, and the amygdala is right between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, okay, right between there. It sort of connects the two. And your amygdala is constantly checking out for what do I need to do with the information coming into my experience. So it's going, is this a threat or is this okay? As you're sitting in your office, as you're sitting at your desk, hopefully at the moment your amygdala is pretty calm, saying, I can access my prefrontal cortex, I can listen to Colleen, I can listen to this presentation because everything's okay. If for any reason there suddenly comes a threat into your environment, like somebody walks in with a gun, heaven forbid, but we live in South Africa, this can happen, or I don't know, a snake falls out the ceiling, hopefully that's not going to happen, immediately this amygdala is going to send all of the information to the limbic system so that you react. You probably heard of that fight, flight, freeze response. That is what it is. It's a reaction in order to survive. Now, unfortunately, because we're constantly going through the stress with COVID, getting sick, people we love dying, people we love getting sick, worrying about our jobs, worrying about whether we can make sales or not, our amygdala is constantly being triggered. We're constantly having to be alert to, am I okay? Is everybody okay around me? Now, remember my concept of neuroplasticity, whichever we have developed the ability to change our brain, And whichever part of our brain we're using becomes stronger, thicker, and denser. So if I'm using my brain, like for example, I don't know, Novak Djokovic, a tennis player, okay, the parts of his brain to do with hitting a forehand and hitting a serve and integrating physical movements with mental control and that, all of those are thick and dense and strong because he works on them all the time. Okay, if your amygdala, which I don't know about you guys, but my amygdala is certainly alert all of the time at the moment because of the threats that are present in our environment, what is happening? Your amygdalas are getting enlarged and you are becoming more reactive. It's easier to react. It's easier to be defensive, to get angry, to get upset, to not be calm, wise, and centered, but rather to react to the environment, because that's what your brain is designed to do. Okay, 2 more parts quickly. Hippocampus, right there alongside the amygdala. This is the part of the brain to do with the long-term memory. So what is happening at the moment, what is being wired into our brains is threat, 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 threat is being wired into our long-term memory. I am concerned about what is going to happen with young people who are constantly living in this world of threat while their brain is a primary part of development and formation. And then the last part I mentioned is the cerebellum. This is here right at the back of the brain, and this is the part to do with movement and balance, and I'll explain to you why that is important. Okay, Ronaldo, I can see, I don't know if I'm being really interesting or boring, but there's nothing in the chat so far. Has anybody got a question before I move on to say how do we apply this?
We're actually taking questions on our WhatsApp group as well, and I do have a question. And the question is based on which parts of your brain is responsible for humor and being witty?
For humor. Actually, it takes, let me just explain something as well, is that I'm talking about the brain as though they are these discrete parts that operate of their own accord. But in actual fact, the brain, you're not left brain or right brain, you're whole brain. And our brain is, you're engaging with all parts of the brain at any time. It's just whatever, when you're thinking, doing mathematical and logical sums, your prefrontal cortex will primarily be engaged. Humor is definitely a part of the brain that engages logic, reasoning, okay? But it also engages creativity and our emotions. So humor is particularly a part, and people only have a sense of humor when they have a well-developed ability to see logic, as well as to see inconsistency, as well as to experience creativity and to be free with their emotional state. So many parts of the brain.
Okay. And then I got a very interesting question, and this comes from one of our DPs. And the question is, the hippocampus, is there a threat mentally in youngsters during COVID? And how do we train this out?
By mindfulness. Okay, that's my quick answer. But what we have to remember is that we need to take control of how our brain is being wired. Unfortunately, when we are not taking, and that's what mindfulness is about. Remember, I said it's about controlling your mind, developing a well-trained mind. When we're not, what we're doing is we're reacting to our environment constantly. And therefore, what is being wired into our brain is as a result of the external world and circumstances that are happening to us. So this is exactly what we're doing, and we can teach our children to be mindful as well. Absolutely critical skill. If those of you who got children, there's a book called Mind Sight. Okay, Mind Sight by Dan Siegel. He's got a book called Mind Sight, which is fantastic, talks about the brain and mindfulness, and he's got a book called Mind Sight for Children as well. Really a critical skill to develop for your kids as we're going through this time. So rather, instead of mindlessly responding and reacting to whatever's happening externally, how can they actually be wise, centered, and present and aware within the circumstances and take control of their own minds? Because, by the way, between the ages of 0 and about 25 is where the optimal plasticity happens. After that, it takes a whole lot more effort for us to leverage plasticity. So these minds are being formed at a really critical time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Colleen, and then one last question, I think, before we move on. I think it's a great question in terms of what's your feel on prescription medication to treat mindfulness?
Okay. Okay. You see me groaning here. And the reason that I'm groaning is because I'm not anti-prescription medication when a person has a clinical disorder. Okay, if there is and that can happen. And I don't think I've got the time on this talk to go into what constitutes a clinical disorder, etc. But yes, if somebody is suffering from clinical depression, take medication. If a child has got diagnosed ADHD, help them and support them with medication, because the psychological implications of not being able to focus at school, the social implications, etc., are actually too profound. However, what I want to say to all of you is that we live in a society where it's easy to take an external substance in order to stimulate a certain kind of mind state. And whenever we take an external substance to create something, what happens is our brain stops producing that substance of its own accord. Okay, and so an extreme example, maybe or maybe not, I'm not sure, is if I take cocaine. Okay, what happens is the cocaine stimulates the dopamine producing center of the brain. Dopamine is that excitement. It's our motivation. Okay, if we don't have dopamine, we have no motivation. So if I take cocaine, stimulates the dopamine center, guess what? I'm motivated. I'm excited. I can stay up all night. I can do lots of things. Okay. But what happens is the brain says, okay, there's an external substance. I don't need to produce this dopamine myself. So the brain, the nucleus accumbens that produces the dopamine shuts down the production of dopamine. And guess what? I become depressed. I become anxious. I can't think clearly. And the brain's going, no ways. I'm not giving you any more dopamine. There's been way too much. So what do? I take more dopamine. I take more cocaine. I don't, by the way. So please don't think that I do. I take more cocaine in order to stimulate more dopamine. And so the addiction cycle is set up. And what I'm saying to you, Ronaldo, is that we need to step away from the easy, because you better believe, you're going to see right now, mindfulness is not easy. Okay, it takes effort, and I'm not pretending that it doesn't. Okay, but we need to create a brain that changes itself rather than an external substance that we then become dependent on. And by the way, as you know, we become accustomed to it, and then it loses its efficacy anyway. Okay, so that was my very quick answer to where I can jump on my soapbox and give you some information. Okay, so let's
only take Coke if needed.
I beg your pardon?
We should only take Coke if needed.
Ronaldo. Okay. Okay. So basically, what I'm going to show you, and I've shared this with you, is we have essentially got two circuits in our brain. You've got a circuit called the narrative circuit. Okay, and what does narrative mean? It means story. This is the story that goes around in your brain. Okay, and we're living 95% of our lives in a story in our head. The story that goes round and round and round and round. Now, the problem with the story, it's always in the past or the future. Always. Okay, always. So you're always thinking about what I could have done, what I should have done, or what's going to happen next. And the other problem with the story is it's mostly negative. Not always, but mostly. So what I mean by that is your brain is designed to focus on what goes wrong rather than what can go right. Okay, so if you have a perfectly fabulous day at work, everything goes well, and one person is rude to you, that's all you can think about at night. You get a 360-degree feedback, you've got 30 wonderful comments at the end of the feedback, and you've got one negative comment, all your focus goes to the negative. Now, this is a biological imperative that our brain focuses on negative because it's how I stay alive. I don't need to get terribly excited about the rice juicy berries, but I need to get very excited about the saber-toothed tiger. Otherwise, I won't be there to enjoy the nice juicy berries. So when I say it's mostly negative, it's not always. Sometimes we remember things that are wonderful, make us feel good. Sometimes we think about what could happen that is exciting, but mostly we focus on what could go wrong. And this is where regrets, guilt, recriminations, fear, worry, and anxiety exist. Guess what? Okay? It's a story in your head. Okay? And most of you are going, this is not a story in my head, it's my real life. Let me just explain this to you. And by the way, this is not belittling the pain and the exhaustion that people are feeling. It's not belittling it. It's saying, how do we manage it? So the problem with this past is it's mostly a perception. That's probably another 3-week talk I can give you, is there's no such thing as reality, only your perception of reality. Or if it's in the future, it's an illusion. You don't know what's going to happen. How often have you sat up at night going, I know for me, when I used to travel so much, I go, what if I'm not going to make the flight connection? What if I'm going to make the connection? And I'd stay up at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking, I'm either going to make the connection or I'm not. Okay, I can certainly plan for the future, but getting lost in that narrative does not serve me. I can also learn from the past, but getting caught in the narrative of what's already happened, what use does that have? Okay, just remembering as well that just thinking creates a profound physiological experience, okay, that is the same as the saber-toothed tiger jumping out in front of me. So if I'm just thinking about somebody who was rude to me, immediately my blood pressure is going to go up, my cortisol levels are going to go up, my immune system is going to go down just by thinking about it. Okay, it's crazy. So we need to learn to get into the circuit of direct experience. That is being in the present. Okay, that is what mindfulness is. That is what I'm going to teach you now. And this is where peace and presence exists. Because in the present moment, there's no worry, there's no fear, there's no anxiety, there's no regrets, there's no should have, could have, would have. There just is the present moment. Okay, there just is isness. And that is where peace of mind exists. And mental control for high performance. So my 3 aspects of this, I also gave you my model. And this is my model that I developed for my PhD that brings together Eastern and Western perspectives of mindfulness. So we're going to begin with meditation. Okay, now please, those of you who are now getting panicky that I'm going to light the incense and start burning the candles, you may go onto your emails now and start answering your emails. But just understand that the rest of the company that are going to stay with me and go through the exercise of meditation are the ones that are beginning to train their minds and develop a fine, trained, and capable mind. So it's your choice whether you stay here or go, but I promise you there's no incense and candles involved. So meditation is basically how you train your mind to be mindful. So it's the basis. Okay, it's like going to gym. You go to gym, remember neuroplasticity, you go to gym and you lift the weights and your muscles get stronger, thicker, and denser. With meditation, what we're doing is we're training your mind to be aware of the present moment, okay? And that is where you're exercising that part of your mind. It's a very specific part, by the way. It's called the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, VLPFC, which exists on your left and your right temples, and it's the part of your brain to do with self-control. Okay, you want to have self-control over your thinking, you want to have self-control over your emotional impulses, you want to have self-control over whether you get up out of bed and go for a run or whether you resist the chocolate cake. This is the part of the brain that we are building when we practice meditation. So it's like going to gym for the mind, okay? And I'm going to show you a pretty easy way. What I'm going to do is as the definition says, I'm going to bring your attention to moment experiences in the present. Just remember the key for mindfulness is no judgment. So what is going to happen is as I bring your attention to the present moment, your mind will wander because that's what minds do. And that's okay. That's why us Westerners can practice mindfulness meditation, because many Eastern forms of meditation take years and years and years of training, sitting in an ashram or on a mountain by a monastery, take years of training to be able to clear your mind. We're not doing that. We're bringing your attention to the present moment. And part of the practice is it's okay if your mind wanders. You just notice it. Okay, that's the beauty of mindfulness for us as Westerners. Okay, so what I'd like you all to do is I'd like you to sit comfortably wherever you are. If you are driving, you can still do this exercise. Just please do not close your eyes. But for the rest of you, if you wish, you can close your eyes. It just will enhance the experience slightly. You don't have to, however. And just listen to what I'm going to take you through for the next few minutes. So just get comfortable on your chair. And let's begin by just paying attention to the sensation of our feet. Just notice your feet. You may feel warmth, the tightness of your shoes, the pressure of the floor. Just pay attention to your feet for a moment. Okay, now pay attention to the sensation of your legs against the chair. Now pay attention to your stomach. Feel any tightness, tension, Allow your stomach to relax. Often the seat of anxiety, we don't even realize the tension that we're holding in our stomach. Okay, now pay attention to your breathing as you breathe in and out. Remembering if your mind wanders, that's okay. Just bring your attention back to your breathing when you can. Allowing your breaths to lengthen, to deepen. Noticing how your chest rises and falls as you breathe. Notice the sensation of cool air in your nostrils as you breathe in and warm air as you breathe out. Now pay attention to your shoulders. Allow them to relax. And to your jaw. Relax your jaw. Pay attention to the muscles on your face. Soften your face. Now pay attention to any visual images. If your eyes are closed, any visual images behind your eyelids, lights, shapes. If your eyes are open, just focus on any object. Just pay attention to whatever it is that is in your visual field. And now pay attention to any sounds that you can hear. Don't tell stories about the sounds, just notice them. Pay attention to your fingertips. You may notice them tingling or pulsing. Pay attention to the palm of your right hand and the palm of your left hand. And once again, pay attention to your breathing as you breathe in and out. And slowly and gently, you can begin to open your eyes. Okay, so Ronaldo, now I'm going to ask for the chat. I just would love to know, what did you notice about that experience? What did you notice about? Anyone can comment. Ronaldo, you didn't fall asleep. I'm just checking.
No.
It's a great sleep technique for when your mind is racing and you need to fall asleep. It's an excellent technique to focus on any sensory experiences. Get your head out of that mind narrative. Okay, calmer, definitely. There's a and it was quick. I mean, I only did a very short meditation there. Grounding, relaxing. I see the comments.
Yeah.
What else did you notice? Sorry, Ronaldo.
I think I was listening to Eminem. I'm joking. It was. I think from my side, there's a lot of distraction. Like you mentioned,
yes.
What do you think? Listen to the sound, but don't tell a story about the sound. I was already telling a story about how hungry I am because I could hear my stomach.
So just remember, the biggest problem with us, especially most of you A-type personalities, is we get all anxious about that. I've got to do this perfectly now. The beauty of mindfulness is that is there's no performance anxiety attached to it. Just actually being in the present moment for 1 or 2 seconds is a remarkable feat in itself for these brains of ours that are, and by the way, our brains are being wired to be constantly distracted. Don't even get me talking about what technology is doing to our brains, okay? But automatically we start judging it or we start telling stories about it. But just 1 or 2 moments of actually bringing our minds back has a profound effect. Now, let me tell you that, thanks for those comments, 10 minutes of mindfulness practice a day, 10 minutes a day, drops your cortisol levels by an average of 50%. And I'm not just quoting some generic research. This was research that was done by the chief scientist in the Chinese government, if I can mention what's happening there right now, that I've worked with in Boston. And he has got profound evidence that the mindfulness has got a bigger impact on dropping your cortisol levels than any other relaxation technique. Okay. And 10 minutes of mindfulness practice a day, what does it do? It grows your ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, part of your brain to do with discipline and self-control. It's like going to gym for the mind. But you don't have to do it perfectly. That's the joy of mindfulness. Okay. So, basically, there are many ways that you can practice it, okay? So what I just did is I took you through what we call a body scan meditation. There's many mindfulness meditations that you can get online that all they do is breathing. That is hard for us if we're new meditators. You can't just focus on your breathing for 10 minutes. You'll have started preparing your answers to your emails. So that's why I find the body scan can be particularly effective. There's many different ways. I'm not going to spend a long time on this because we don't have a lot of time. The body scan, you can get many different apps. Headspace, there's one called Calm, there's one called Waking Up, it's my favorite one. Moment, there's many, many different apps that you can get. I would encourage you to try different apps. Some focus on breathing, on sensations, physical, even emotional sensations. There's something called loving kindness. For those of you who think this is all soft and fuzzy, I'm going to give you some science behind that in a second. Go walk outdoors and look at the sky. I mean, look at the sky and look at a flower and feel the leaves on the trees as they rustle. It's mindfulness moments. Journaling, being present. Okay, journaling is also, I could do a few hours talk on it. Very, very powerful way to manage depression and anxiety. Meditations on gratitude. Okay, there are many apps around it. You're thinking, how weird is that? But it's to actually sit and be consciously grateful for who I am, what I have, and sending that out there has a profound effect on your emotional well-being. Doing visualizations that's what great athletes do. They visualize not as if it's going to happen in the future, but as if it's happening right here and now. They do those visualizations around hitting the perfect shot. I work with a lot of athletes, and we work hugely with visualization in terms of actually training the brain, because just picturing something activates the same neural pathways in the brain as if you're actually doing something. Okay, so even if you're visualizing yourself being calm and centered when you're doing your next presentation to the board, okay, it has a profound effect on actually training your brain to be calm when you do the presentation to the board. Movement. Most of my meditations I do on the move. Okay, I've got yoga written there. Yoga is like movement meditation. When I go for a run, I pay attention to my breathing, the sound of my feet as on the sidewalk, the sound of the traffic and the birds around me. I'm mindful and present instead of lost in thought. Okay, koans are kind of they very go and look up koans. It's such fun. They Zen stories that make you think differently. So like a koan will be make you meditate on philosophical concepts. So a very simple koan would be, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Now, for those of you who are about to run off to your emails, please don't, because I'll stop being so weird right away. Laughter. to laughter. Have fun. Fire. Get a candle. I mean, you know what it's like when you buy fire and how enraptured you can become in the fire. Use it as a means, as a means of focus. Labyrinth. Go print out a labyrinth. They're brilliant, and taking your mind through that labyrinth, even with a pencil, never mind walking the labyrinth, which is just wonderful. Art and creativity, those coloring in books that are so popular at the moment are a brilliant. I've got a lot of my senior executives that in their offices, while they're in their meetings, they're sitting and coloring in because it's keeping their minds focused. Self-hypnosis, just go try it. I know it sounds weird, soft and fuzzy. Just go download on YouTube self-hypnosis and do it for anything that you need to think better about. Self-hypnosis for confidence, self-hypnosis for addiction, self-hypnosis for for interpersonal relationships, whatever. It's not weird. It's just a way of focusing the mind. Yoga, and then yoga nidra. Again, I'm not going to talk a lot about it. Those of you who are struggling to sleep, this is your technique. Okay, you download Yoga Nidra, they're free online, and you just listen to them 5, 10, 15 minutes. You will fall asleep like that when your mind is caught in that narrative. So the next part, obviously, I don't have a long time left, so I'm just going to go through it quickly, Ronaldo, but then I'll open up for any questions afterwards. The next part is about being intentional. So we first got the meditation, which is the Eastern perspective of mindfulness. Now we're talking about intentionality, which is more of a Western perspective, which is being purposeful, focusing on who it is we want to be, what it is we want to do. So the story I want to tell you, I'm sure many of you have heard of the story of Felix Baumgarten, who was it was the Red Bull experiment, the guy who jumped from outer space down to Earth. When was it? It was, I can't remember, 20, about a few years, 2012, I think, 2012. So he jumped, he went up in a balloon into outer space and jumped out, and he broke the sound barrier without any kind of apparatus. But the interesting story is about they were in preparation for years and years and years. He was training to be able to do this feat of jumping out the hot air balloon and breaking the sound barrier. I think it was like more than 130, 1,500 kilometers per hour, something crazy speed like that. And 4 years before he actually did the feat, while they were in training, he suddenly came to the people that had been training him, to the old guys, and he said, I can't do it. I actually can't do it anymore. And the reason that he couldn't do it anymore was because he lost the confidence, or he became unbelievably fearful of putting the helmet on his head. Okay. That was it. He wasn't scared of jumping from outer space. He was scared of putting the helmet on his head. Anyway, they brought in Michael Gervais, who's one of my gurus in this field, and he works with the NFL. He works with many professionals and helping them train their mind. He taught him mindfulness, and what he was taught to do is how to be very intentional about what he was experiencing and how he was thinking in every single moment of what he had to do. Not just in the fact, because they'd all been focusing on how do you jump out, how do you manage your fear, etc., like that. But it was every single aspect, including putting on the helmet. So I have a quick little video to show you of Felix's experience.
Release.
If you still walk away, 'cause there's room to feel ashamed. Yeah, we all feel the same.
The whole world working out. I'm feeling all right. Jump her away.
Speed 725. Going fuel 70 stable. Just safe.
Okay, over 4 minutes in free fall. Isn't that the most incredible experience? And he had to be trained in mindfulness techniques in order to be engaged in that. So I'm sure most of you, your managers are not wanting you to jump out of in outer space, but sometimes we feel like we're jumping from outer space, and there's the tiniest things that are actually getting in the way of us actually being able to perform. So the art of being intentional is be intentional about your physical being. What is the nutrition that you're putting into your body? How is it that you're moving? How are you sitting? How are you exercising your physical body? Be intentional in your relationships. Let me tell you, your child knows when you're present and when you're not present. Okay, and can I tell you what happens if you're not present? Your child will go and find somebody who is present. Can I tell you who is present? Is the drug dealer. Okay, our children know, because most of all what we're doing is we're role modeling not being present. And they know it and they experience it and they feel it. And be mindful and intentional about how you're going to perform. What it is, as I walk into this meeting, I am going to be deliberate and intentional about listening to what everybody has to say. I'm going to be deliberate and intentional about being curious about what is possible for us. Don't just exist, be on unconscious and on automatic, okay? And most of all, most importantly, and this is also where a lot of people want to leave for their emails because they don't want to talk about this thing called self. But let me tell you, this begins with self. If you don't focus on self-awareness and your own well-being in terms of yourself, you are not ever going to be a high performer. And again, we don't teach people this. We don't teach people how to think about themselves, how to work with themselves, with their own emotional, psychological well-being. And we need to have confidence. If you do not have self-confidence, if you do not have self-worth and self-esteem, what do? You carry on living through life with no self-worth and self-esteem. You are never going to be a high performer. Every high performer that you will ever come across has got confidence in themselves and confidence in their abilities. We need to have courage. You better believe success does not come to the faint-hearted. But in order to have courage, we need to have confidence. You're not going to have the courage to step forward if you don't have confidence in your own ability to move forward. You need self-control. You've got to build, people say to me, oh, Colleen, you're this amazing coach and you transform lives. And I go, yes. And it takes self-discipline, whether you like it or not. It takes effort, and just accepting that and being present with that fact can enable us remarkably. It takes compassion. Self-compassion allows us to be compassionate for others. Compassion is not pathetic. Compassion is wisdom. When we have compassion for ourselves, we allow ourselves to make mistakes, but we allow ourselves to learn from those mistakes and to move on. And optimism, again, this is not this la dolphins rolling up floating up the Venice canals. This is about, I believe that I can survive, I can move forward no matter what the circumstances. Okay, I call it realistic optimism. It's not about la la land stuff. It's about that whatever happens, no matter how difficult, no matter how hard, I will survive it because I know myself. I have confidence, courage, compassion, and self-control. Again, another 3-hour talk of mine, sleep, rest. Do not underestimate how important it is. If you are not getting enough sleep, then you are profoundly damaging your mental well-being. It is the most strongly correlated reason for age-related brain diseases is poor sleep habits. Okay, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, told all of his executives, I get 8 hours of sleep a night, you get 8 hours of sleep a night. Okay, prioritize sleep, that you're prioritizing performance. And last of all, it's a choice. It's your choice to take whatever it is that you are doing and to allow it to become part of your success, or you can carry on with what you're doing and carry on the same trajectory that you're currently on. Okay. And then the very last part, I've got a couple of minutes to finish, is the art of consciousness, which is kind of the most difficult to share and kind of the most difficult to even absorb. And this is where we step above ego identity. And what I mean by ego identity, you think ego is, oh, I'm so great, I'm so wonderful, I'm so important, but it's not. Ego is your attachment to having to prove who you are. So whatever you're doing, whatever success you're achieving, you're doing it because of the approval or the congratulations that you're getting for that success. When you're not attached to an ego identity, you do things for the pure meaning and purpose of doing that thing. It's not about moving towards the outcome. It's about for the experience itself. Okay. Ego identity is about being attached to I'm male or female. I'm black or white. I'm rich or poor. I'm smart or not smart. I'm nice or not nice. That is just story. That is just narrative. Step above that and be in the pure essence of yourself, that soul, that existence, that is the pureness of your spirit. I know this sounds a bit woo-woo, but that when you step out of that, you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to be right. You can actually allow yourself to be happy. And that is the art of consciousness. Okay. So I think I'm just going to go because my challenge, okay, at the end is my challenge to all of you is to take the meditation, to take the intentionality, and to take the consciousness into your lives. Meditate every day. It is difficult. Make no mistake, it's easier for me to ask a senior executive to double his income than it is to ask him to meditate for 10 minutes a day. But let me tell you, this is what will transform your lives. Okay? Create a time for it, even if it's going for a walk at lunchtime, and do that conscious meditation where you're training your mind to be in the present moment. Be intentional about what it is that you want, how you're going to live your lives, how you're present. Just be intentional tonight when you're with your family, okay, about being present with your family and see what a difference it makes. And be conscious. Step out of that need to be right. Step out of that need to prove who you are and just be in the pure essence of who you really are. Be curious about your world. Be conscious about your world and get out of that narrative that is holding you back. Ronaldo, thank you. And over to you.
Thank you very much. I think that a lot of people have taken a lot from this. I've got so many questions. I know that you're going to stay on for the next 30 minutes to go through these questions with us. So for those people that have other commitments, you are welcome to jump off this call whilst I start fielding the questions to Colleen. Colleen, I think I'm going to go straight for it. First question is, and I think this comes down to your background. Firstly, did you read all those books?
Of course. And I did tell you, I said I'll tell my story. So I'll just quickly tell you my story, okay? Is that I did fail standard 9. I had no self-confidence. I had no self-esteem. I used to weigh 40 kilograms more than I do now. I smoked, I drank. I'm 55 years old now. And up until the age of 40, I was a very different person to up to the age of 40, okay? I had quite a dramatic event in my life. It doesn't have to take a dramatic event. In fact, preferably do it before it takes, because the dramatic event will happen if you don't take control of your lives, by the way. I had a dramatic event and I suddenly realized that I actually had to change my life. I did a very different job up until the age of 40. And I changed my life. I discovered coaching. I discovered neuroscience. I went back to university. I got a psychology degree. I started studying, and I took control basically of my life. I lost the weight. I stopped drinking and smoking. I started traveling overseas. On average, before COVID, I was doing 65 flights a year on average, and started teaching people about neuroscience. Okay. I would never have sat in front of 5 people to deliver a talk before, Ronaldo. Now I stand in front of audiences of 2,000 people, and I use mindfulness to be able to be present and to be able to deliver. So I'm really passionate about what I'm talking about. I'm walking the walk up. I've lived it, and it's life changing. Up until the age of 40, I was a beautician. I had a little beauty salon from home. Loved it. I used to paint nails and do massages. Now I travel the world inspiring people. And so that was my long answer to your short question about the books. It's about being present to what is possible. Discovering neuroplasticity and discovering mindfulness was life transforming for me. So yeah, it's possible for anyone.
Okay. So I think that goes into hand in hand with the question, how important is reading to mindfulness?
That is, and I get into trouble also because I have, unfortunately, some strong opinions. Unfortunately, what is happening at the moment, because of the distractibility of technology at the moment, is that when we go to read something online, on average, it takes about 90 seconds before we click on the first link and get distracted into something else. So what we're training our minds to do is to distractibility. And a lot of people say that's great because we're being flexible and adaptable. But in actual fact, what it does, as soon as we are, this is the ladies, I must tell you why the benefit that men have bigger brains, men have more brain cells than women do. But that prefrontal cortex cannot pay attention to more than one thing at a time. It is a physiological impossibility. What do you call it? Multitasking is a complete myth. When you are multitasking, on average, it takes your IQ down by about 10 points. Okay. And the reason that it's an average of 10 points is it's 15 points for men, 5 points for women. Okay, ladies, 5 points is too much drop in IQ anyway, so don't multitask. But women have got a bigger corpus callosum that joins left and right hemisphere, so women are able to swap between tasks slightly easier than men do. Back to your question about reading. Reading is deliberate. Reading is focused. Reading is paying attention, and I'm talking about books, okay, or on digital devices, but stopping allowing yourself being distractible in that multitasking because it just drops your IQ and raises your anxiety as well.
Okay. So there's a lot of questions that I can bring on the people, but I think it'll be easier if I just direct the questions to you. Can intuition affect your mindfulness, and in a positive way or a negative way? So what's your opinion on that?
Okay, another 3-week topic. So intuition is massively heightened by using mindful techniques. Because what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is being aware of the present. What is intuition? Intuition is bodily, physiological, subconscious, and unconscious prompts towards towards awareness, okay? But most of us are so unconscious of what is happening internally. I mean, it's called a gut response or a gut reaction for a reason. Your mind is not just here sitting in your brain. Your mind is in your whole body. It's in your whole experiential world. It's in the system that you inhabit. And so therefore, if you want to be alert to what it is, what are the messages my body is giving me? What is the messages my environment is giving me? We need to be present in it. Most of us are so distracted that we can't even pay attention to intuition. And it is there's so much research, what do they call traders on the stock market? The traders that have high intuitive knowledge trade far more successfully than traders that go off academic or logic. Okay, I can give you so many more examples, but intuition is very powerful to learn to access.
Okay. So this question, when I looked at it, I was like, okay, very interesting question, is how do you differentiate between mindfulness from suppression?
Mindfulness from suppression. It's totally
Yes.
the opposite. So it's important because if we're talking about emotions, what are some of the strategies that we have to manage emotions? There are quite a few. Most of us are doing it badly because what we're doing is suppressing emotions, especially at the moment. So what is happening at the moment, okay, is we are experiencing sadness. Okay, so what do we do? Push it away. I mustn't be sad. I must get on with my job. Or I'm angry. I'm damn angry. I don't know about you. I'm damn angry about the release of a virus into our planet, okay, and the way our people are responding to it, etc. Okay, but anger is not bad. Sadness is not bad. It's a human expression of a human experiential state which drives action. That's why we have emotions, because emotions drive action. Okay, so I want to be mindful of my emotions. I don't want to suppress them. Okay, I want to actually say, what is this? Okay, what is this sadness? What do I do with it? Maybe I have to grieve. Maybe I have to reach out and support somebody or reach out for support. Maybe I just have to process it and be present. Sad is not bad. It's just sad. But we've also created in the Western world, we've got to avoid all these so-called negative emotions. Emotions are just emotions. It's part of the human experience. Don't suppress.
Okay. So with regards to mindfulness and sleep patterns, do you think a power nap during the day is probably a good thing?
Yes.
For you, or just 8 hours of sleep?
Power naps are great. Sufficient sleep is what we're looking for, okay? Yes, in an ideal world, you're getting it over a period of time. Usually there's a period of wakefulness in between those 8 hours. By the way, it's one of those curves. What do you call it? Bell curve? No. Yeah, bell curve? Normal curve. And the normal curve is that most people need around 8 hours. Some people need as much as 9 or 10. Some people need as little as 5 or 6. It is your genetic inheritance of how much sleep you need. Okay, it changes slightly as you go through. You need less and less as you go into adulthood and through adulthood. But round about 8 hours is most of us. That normal curve, most of us sit there in the normal. Okay. If you are lucky enough to only need 5 or 6 hours, it's remarkable, and it's a genetic abnormality, by the way. And if you're saying to me, I can make do with 5 or 6 hours sleep a night, that means you are not getting sufficient sleep. If you are tired and need a power nap in the day, it means that you're not getting sufficient sleep, but I'd rather you power nap than didn't get sufficient sleep.
Okay. So in other words, ITech should allow us sleep on the job if we need to.
Yes.
I like that our execs are on the call, so that's brilliant. The next question is, can mindfulness assist a person who's had a stroke to regain physical ability? So I think that goes across any disabilities.
Yeah,
obviously not a mental disability.
Yeah, quite a heartfelt question. So any kind of physical disability, emotional disability, mental disability, grief, trauma, anything, mindfulness can assist in healing. Okay, so remember neuroplasticity. Okay, neuroplasticity says that the brain can change right throughout your lifetime. So one of the new techniques, Ronaldo, for example, is if somebody suffers a stroke, what we used to do is we used to send them home for rehab or send them home to rest for 6 weeks or, 6 months and then put them into rehab. Now what the procedure is that you start working with that person immediately, because what can happen is if you need to get it in, there's a critical period where the person actually can start rebuilding their brain. Now, clearly, if there's been a bad enough stroke that, say, for example, in the left hemisphere and I can no longer use my right hand, okay, it's that part of the brain is damaged. But what we used to do is teach the person to use their left hand. Now what they'll do immediately, as soon as that person wakes up, is that they won't allow them to use their left hand. They will put them with their right hand until such time as their brain can start to rewire that they can start to use their right hand again. So plasticity gives a lot of optimism around brain injuries. Obviously, there's limitations, but the sooner we start to work with limited brains, the better. My son has special needs. And he's only got the IQ of about a 10-year-old. He's 21 years old. But he was expected to achieve is way below what he has achieved. Now, he will never, ever be a mathematician. He'll never, ever get a matric because there's limitations to his capacity. However, he has enhanced abilities because of the effort and, I don't make him work all day, I promise you, but he uses in fact, he practices mindfulness beautifully. Okay, my son is profoundly brain damaged. We sit together and he says, "Mommy, look at the sky, feel the air." We practice mindfulness and it enhances his brain function.
Wow, that's amazing. I've got a suggestion from one of our execs in terms of book recommendations, and I think that like Zantal will drop you an email, and then we can get some book recommendations from you, and we'll circulate that with the rest of our.
The one that you're just talking about now is The Brain That Changes what we're talking about now is it's called The Brain That Changes Itself. Beautiful book on plasticity. So for those of you who've got children with learning disabilities, or even a family member, or yourself who's got any kind of had any brain dysfunction, The Brain That Changes Itself is an excellent book. The best book of all time, in my opinion, it's only my opinion, Eckhart Tolle. He wrote 2 books. One's called A Whole New Earth. One's called The Power of Now. If my house had to burn down, I know I could always buy another book, but I would grab this book and my son and get out the house.
Very important. And I think like you obviously shared your tips with us, and I think this is going to be the last point from you. You shared your tips with us about mindfulness and using certain apps and so on. And how do you? I think a lot of people stop after a while in terms of that habit creation. What would you say is the most important thing in terms of creating that habit to do the meditation every single day? And this question comes from myself.
Okay, so sure. Okay, a lot of talks about habits. First of all, you have to want to create change. Okay, if you don't care about it, then don't be bothered. But decide, what is this mindfulness going to, that was I was kind of trying to give across in this talk. What is it going to give you? What is the benefit going to be? Okay, so if you want to change any behavior, whether it's giving up drinking, whether it's starting exercise, whether it's, oh no, wait, we don't have to give up drinking. Cyril did it for us. Yeah. But whatever new habit you want to create, okay, you first have to want the new habit. So focusing on that, what it is that I want to have. Then what we have to do is we have to create deliberate, focused attention on the new habit. And the best way to do that in terms of creating a mindfulness practice is to create a ritual. So I do it when I wake up in the morning. I do it, but basically what I do is that before any meeting, I take 10 minutes before a meeting, block out the gap, and I do a 10 minutes mindfulness meditation meeting. I think you should create rituals, and I think you should create structures within your organization for mindfulness moments. Actually, you can do it within your team. Even if you take 2 minutes at the beginning of every meeting, say, let's just get present. Let's get present to our breath, or let's get present to, whatever's in our visual field or whatever. Okay, so let's pay attention. Share, if you want to create a new habit, share the habit. So creating a social kind of accountability is always very useful. There's so many more techniques for creating a new habit. And I think also find something that works for you. There's like, you can see I've got a brain that goes all over the place. So it's very hard for me to just sit and be silent for 10 minutes. So I started yoga at the beginning of lockdown last year. Never thought I'd do yoga in my entire life. You definitely don't want to see me doing it because I can't bend my elbow upwards. But the yoga is like a movement meditation. And so and always, Ronaldo, if you give yourself a challenge, it's a very powerful way to stick to a new habit. Okay. So I challenged myself to do yoga for 36 days. So I did yoga for 36 days. I'd never done it in my life before. And then I stopped doing it for 3 weeks. And then I said, okay, so 5 days a week. So then I did it 5 days a week, and then I kind of stopped it again. So on the 6th of April this year, I said 365 days of yoga. Okay, that's my challenge. I'm now on day about 92 or 93. 3 weeks ago, I broke my collarbone. Okay, that's why I'm not lifting my arm. And I've been doing one-armed yoga for the last 3 weeks. Okay, so give yourself a challenge and commit to what it is that you're going to do. It changes your life. Yes, it takes effort. Too bad, so sad. That's what it takes to be successful.
That's great. I think you've really empowered us today, and I think the entire thing was hit home with every single one of us. We've taken a lot from it, and I know from a marketing point of view, we're definitely going to send out tips for mindfulness. We're going to send out the book recommendations, the app recommendations, and this is a moment for the entire iTech that I think will change the way we think going forward and change the way we do things. And I really appreciate it. And I think from our exec side as well, they really appreciate you coming on, and they believed that this is something that needed to be done. So we really appreciate it, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ronaldo. It's been a great privilege. And
thank you, Colleen. It was amazing.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thank
be well.
You for your time.
Be mindful.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye, everybody.
Bye.